audio and video the moment you join the session. See, if you want to take the best at this moment, so please cooperate with us, follow the virtual online guidelines. And you need to rename yourself as soon as you join. See, renaming is very important because you are being marked present or absent for every session. Okay, every class you attend, if you are present in all the classes, you get the attendance for the whole day, right? And for that reason, we want that your name, admission number, class, and section, all these three things should match. Okay, so please write your name first, correct name, admission number, class, and section. If any one of these things is not matching, right, with our records, in that case, we'll not mark you present, children. Right, so we are telling you in advance. So please make sure that you do it. Okay, second thing, next thing is that if you have any query related to the class, that will be entertained through my mail ID, and my mail ID is ashishavasan at lancesconvent.net. So please, for the moment, don't raise your hand, right, and maintain the decorum and discipline of the virtual class, right? Even you people yesterday behaved very nicely. Again and again, I'm appreciating it. So follow the same trend, children. Okay, right. Okay, so as just 4 minutes before the meeting got disconnected yesterday, so as we were doing the key areas in rural development, I covered these, right? The first key area I talked about was the development of the productive resources, then the development of human resources, where we will be talking. Aditya, please, last 5 minutes, I'll take your query if you have, right? I'll try to take it up, but only on the condition if you people behave properly. In that case, you will not be given this opportunity. Okay, right? Okay, children. So now, first was development of the productive resources. Second, development of human resource. Right? When we talk about the human resource, that means we are talking about human capital. Right? So human capital formation here we are referring to. Then the honest implementation of land reforms, right? And then next we have is the infrastructure development. As we know that infrastructure is the lifeline of any economy. If we have a very good infrastructure, the rate of development, the pace at which the country develops becomes faster. Okay, so electricity facilities and all those facilities should be provided to the people in the rural areas. Second, we have is the special measures for poverty alleviation programs. Now, special measures for poverty alleviation programs means that government has taken some measures to uh, eradicate poverty, right? And for that, we studied some were the wage generation employment programs, and some were the self employment generation programs. So, all these measures should be initiated in the rural areas. Now, actually, here this is a point from where I would like to start again, and I'll take this up in detail. Although, when some children joined later, I took this topic, I'm repeating this topic again. Okay, now since we know that credit and marketing, that is the lingering challenges in the rural areas, I have told you earlier. Now, these two areas, basically, we say that credit because farmers need credit for so many purposes. If they don't get credit, then I don't think they'll be able to survive. Now, first of all, credit basically, if we want the rural economy to grow faster, so the credit should be made available to these people at a very easy rate of interest, and very conveniently they should get the credit. So growth of rural economy depends primarily on infusion of capital. Infusion basically here refers to the availability of capital. Okay, so availability of capital basically is the main ingredient if the rural economy wants to develop. Okay, now from time to time to realize higher productivity. Now, why farmers or people in rural areas need credit from time to time? One basic thing is that they need credit because in order to increase the productivity in agriculture and as well as in the non agricultural sectors. Okay, so agricultural and non agricultural sectors, to do that we need credit, right? That is the basic thing which we all know, right? After this, we further say that in agriculture, the most important reason why in agriculture farmers are in strong need for credit, right? Basically, the agricultural farmers need credit because of the long gestation period between crop sowing and realization of income, right? Now, crop sowing and realization of income, you need to understand here is that when you sow the crops, okay, and when they get converted into a good production or a good harvest, there is quite a time involved in it. It's not that like in industries, if you feed the machines with the raw material and within few hours or days, product is ready. It's not like that in agriculture. Okay, we all know that there are specific seasons, right? There are specific seasons for the production of specific crops, right? So now if this happens, so during this time the farmers need credit. So long gestation period basically means the time period involved between the sowing of crops and till the time when the crop gets ready, right? And when the crop gets ready, then only it will be sold in the market. And by selling these crops in the market, then only when the farmer sells the crops in the market, then only he will be able to earn income. So that means if 4 or 5 months are required between this process, so during these 4 or 5 months to meet his own needs, right? So these 4 or 5 months is called as the gestation period, and that is what you can also call as the waiting period, right? So the farmer is waiting to get to earn income, right? So this is what we mean by the gestation period, right? So this time period is quite long in agriculture sector. So during this time, right, when the farmer is not having any source of income, what they do is to carry on their living, the farmers borrow from various sources, and basically the sources they use are the informal sources. Okay, I'll be talking about in the next slides which are the informal sources. Okay, so the farmer borrows money from the informal sources so that his need he can meet his daily requirements, right? That is firstly when he wants to sow the crops, he needs seeds, fertilizers, so meet all this initial investment, right? So meet his initial investments or to make initial investments on seeds, fertilizers, right? The farmer needs credit, right? He needs money, right? So he borrows from the informal sources. Moreover, to meet the other family requirements, because we know people living in rural areas are mostly superstitious, right? And since they are superstitious, so they always try to go into all those rituals like conducting pujas at home so that everything will go fine and all those things. So, for all these requirements, or let's say if there is some marriage at home or somebody expires, then meeting all those religious ceremonies, farmers, these people in rural areas need credit, right? So, basically, credit is needed in rural areas. Firstly, reason to make the initial investments, right, on seeds, fertilizers, right, and various other agricultural to meet the various other agricultural needs. Secondly, farmers need credit because of the long gestation period involved, right, between crop sowing and the realization of income. And third and the last is to meet their other needs, other expenses, like other expenses like of for let's say ki, expenses of religious ceremonies, right, since some functions are there at home and something like that. So to meet all those requirements, farmer borrows money from the informal sources. Okay, so this was what basically we say is the reason. These are the reasons why farmers need credit, right? Now there are mainly, if I talk about sources of rural credit, now what are the sources through which farmers can take credit, right? The first I have with me is they are the non-institutional sources. Now, non-institutional sources in common language, or might you might have studied it in BST. Those who have BST, you might have studied it in the form of the sources which are informal, right? Informal sources of giving credit, right? So here in economics, those sources are known by the name of non-institutional sources, right? Now non-institutional sources can also be named as, they can also be called as the conventional sources, or even I can call them as the traditional sources, right? And these are the sources, if farmer use these sources, they get caught in a debt trap. We all know, right? When I'll give you the examples, you'll be able to correlate how they get into that debt trap. Okay, so of all the sources we have in the non-institutional sources, right, the most important we have is the money lenders. Now farmers always prefer to take loans from money lenders, right? Now, money lenders basically around 30% of the total credit which is being given by the money lenders in the rural areas, a major share. Okay, so money lenders advance a major share of loans to the rural people, right? So farmers or the rural people are almost depending on money lenders, and because of this there is exploitation of rural people. Money lenders, what they also know that most common source for them to take credit is the money lender. We are the money lender, we as money lenders. So even when they know their worth, the money lenders know their worth, they exploit the farmers. Now how they exploit the farmers, right? Now they exploit the farmers or the peasants by charging very high rate of interest, right? And then after charging high rate of interest, also they manipulate their accounts, like we have seen in the movies also. When black and white era, the movies which were of that era, black and white era, so there we see that the farmers have been exploited in these ways by charging a high rate of interest. And then along with that, these money lenders also manipulate their accounts, right? So in that way these people are caught in a debt trap. Even after facing so many problems, farmers still prefer to take loans from the money lenders. Can any one of you just think? I would like some of you to raise your hands. Why, even after facing so many problems, right? Why, even after facing so many problems, people or the money lenders, farmers still prefer to take loans? Hardik, I'm not able to unmute you, Chai. Okay. Yes, Hardik? Hardik? Hello? I'm not able to hello. Yeah, child, very good. Good to hear your voice. After so many months, I'm hearing you people. Very good, children. Yeah, yeah, Peter, just let me know. Okay, what is collateral? Can you please explain it to others also? I know this has been covered in class 10, but that will be very nice if you do that, Hardik Jain. Yes, better go ahead. Security. Okay, very good. So that is a lack of collateral, right? Can you explain lack of collateral? How? Okay, they need not give a collateral, right? They need not give a security, and even without giving something as security, farmers can take loans from the money lenders. That's very good. Okay, thank you, child. Let me move on to some other child. Okay, Aman. It's
Good
three.
morning, ma'am.
Yes, good morning, child. How are you?
Hi.
Yeah, beta, please. The
Ma'am,
next point.
ma'am, they are not aware of the institutions like bank which offer low interest rates and do not the collateral you have. They take the collateral, but you are freed from the debt trap from the money lenders, and also the low interest rates are charged, whereas the high interest rates you have to pay to the.
Oh, okay, fine, fine. So, second, that can be taken up. Very good. Thank you, child, for your participation. Right. So, okay. Now, I would just move ahead. Right. So, I was saying that after being exploited by the money lenders, right? After being exploited by the money lenders, farmers still prefer to take loans from money lenders. First reason, as given by Hardik, is that because of the lack of collateral. So, if they take loan from the money lenders, there is no need to give anything as the security, keep anything as the security. Okay, that is one reason. So, if they take loans from banks, they need to keep something with the banks as security, which condition is not applicable in case of money lenders. Secondly, if they are not able to pay back the previous loan to the money lender, even they can avail another fresh loan, right? So, but if in case of banks, you have taken a loan, first you need to pay off the previous loan, then only a fresh loan will be granted. But here, this is not the case with the money lenders, right? With the non institutional, especially if I talk about, and among them, money lenders is very easy to approach. No formalities to undergo, no documentation required, as we have in case of other institutional sources. So that is one thing which makes moneylender a very easy person from where loans can be taken. Okay. Now, second, which I have with me is the relatives of the farmers, right? That is the second source, because even when the farmer is poor, obviously in most of the cases, his relatives will also be of the same level. So that means it's very difficult to ask them to give loans, but they at least give it a try. Okay. So relatives is the second source from which farmers can take loans. So in the times of crisis, basically, the cultivators, these farmers, borrow funds from their relatives, right? But the advantage of taking loans from relatives is that here the relatives don't charge any rate of interest. Please, you need to know the difference, right? So relatives don't. If you suppose, God forbids, if you are in need of funds, you ask your relatives, one of your relatives, that you need money, credit, you want to borrow money. Obviously, in relation, we generally don't charge the rate of interest. Okay. The first benefit of taking loans from relatives is that there will be no rate of interest. And secondly, You can return the money at your own convenience, right? So, but in case of banks, whatever is the maturity date, due date, by then you have to return the money. So that is again, we say, an advantage of the source, that is relatives. Third we have is traders and commission agents, right? Now traders and commission agents basically are the, we say, they basically can be, sorry, okay, they basically are, we can say, are the village traders. Now what these people can do, what these people do is that they give loans to the farmers, and in return they take some amount of commission also, right? Like some agent is involved as an intermediary, he works as an intermediary, he arranges loan, maybe from the money lenders, maybe he has a goodwill in the rural, in his village, so he arranges the loan, and he tells the farmer that in that case you will be giving them this much percent of your income or whatever produce you have, right? So that is traders and commission agents. And sometimes in this case the farmers have to mortgage their crops also, and then by mortgaging their crops, in return for that they get the loans. And last is the rich landlords. Now rich landlords, if I talk about, basically the type of people who take loan from rich landlords are the small and the marginal farmers. Okay, so small and the very poor farmers don't approach the rich landlords. It's basically the small and the marginal farmers who take loans from the rich landlords so as to meet their requirements. Okay, so these landlords in turn again charges high rate of interest and thus exploit them. So if I talk about all the non-institutional sources, now, in non institutional sources, what we have learned is that one common feature is there, that these people are exploited if they take loans from non institutional sources. Secondly, the rate of interest is pretty high as compared to what banks are charging. And third, the third feature here is that they can approach easily, right? To let's say they can approach easily to these persons and thus can take loans. Okay. So now with this, we have the next source, that is our the okay non-institutional. After that, we have the institutional sources. Now, just giving you an introduction of institutional sources, India adopted the institutional credit approach in the year 1969. Okay, so that was the year when we moved from informal sources of giving credit to the formal sources of giving credit, right? And this was followed through various agencies, right? It was not that only RBI was there or commercial banks were there. Along with these commercial banks and other, there were various agencies which were set up and which were exclusively, right, which were exclusively engaged in giving loans to the farmers. Okay, so that is what we mean by approach through various agencies, right? And then the main objectives were basically of setting up institutional sources. Can anyone now guess what could be, what can have been the main objectives? Yes, children? Anyone? Why these non-institutional sources were set up? What was the reason? Aman only. Okay, 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 okay. Aryam Jain. Aryam, why I am not able to mute you, unmute you? Aryam? Yes, Aryam? Yes, Aryam? Aryam Jan, please respond, child. Unmute yourself, beta. Aryam, I think he is not attentive. You are? No, but I have unmuted you. But I was asking Aryan, I want this child to answer back. Aryan? Yeah, again he has unmuted. That means he is not attentive. So children, this will not work. You need to be attentive. Anytime I can ask question to any child and you have to be attentive. Don't sit like this. It's not fun going on here. Tisha. Yes, Tisha? Hello? Hello? Tisha, your mic is on. I can see. Now please answer. Tisha Jain, 12G. Hello? I don't know why these children are not responding. This is not done. And this way, then, children, the class cannot be made interactive. Right? And in that case, obviously, the things will be one sided. Okay. Khushi Agicha is the new child. Someone new who has raised the hand. Unable to. Why? I think there is some. I've done something in the settings. Yeah, Khushi.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, child. How are you?
I'm good, ma'am. How are you?
Good. Okay, fine. Now, please answer back.
Ma'am, institutional sources
You
like
know the
commercial
question?
banks.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, that
Institutional
is fine.
sources like
So, what is the main objective of setting up these agencies or setting up government agencies through which loans can be given to the farmers? What is the main objective of the government behind this?
ma'am, they do not exploit and give the loan in less interest.
Okay, very true. So that the production will increase. Very true, children. Okay, good. Thank you, Kushi, for your reply. Okay, so now, right, I'm just moving back to my slide. So now, institutional sources, when I am talking, Aman, please, better later on, can you just give me a few minutes to explain? Right? Okay. Now, institutional sources, as I was saying, that basically the main objective here of the government was or is to provide sufficient amount of loan, right, to the farmers. And moreover, with that sufficient amount, they should get the loans at a low rate of interest, right? And then what will happen? How will it benefit the farmers? Firstly, when they will get sufficient amount, right? Whatever amount they want, the same amount of loan they will get from the government, and the rate of interest charge will be comparatively less than what they are being charging under non-institutional sources. So as a result, what will happen? The production, the small, let's talk about the small and the marginal farmers, they'll be able to raise their productivity, and thus their income will increase, right? So these are basically the benefits, that these are the main objectives of the government. So first is to provide sufficient amount of loan to the farmers, secondly cheaper rate of interest, and third, the farmers will be able to raise the productivity and thus maximize their income. Okay, so now these are the first source here we have is the first source here we have is the commercial bank, commercial banks, right? Now, commercial banks basically, if I talk about, are they were means after the nationalization, right? As I said that nationalization took place in 1969. So after nationalization that happened in 1969, commercial banks expanded their branches, right? They expanded their branches in rural areas as well, right? And with that expansion, they gave credit to the farmers or the people living in the rural areas. Okay, so that is the main aim of setting up commercial banks. That is, after 1969, they expanded themselves and reached the rural areas, and there they gave loan to the farmers also. Then next we have with us is the regional rural banks, right? Regional rural banks are opened basically in the areas where commercial banks cannot be opened. So it was the task given to the regional rural banks to open their branches in the areas where the commercial banks cannot reach, right? So that was the first important point about the regional rural banks. Now, their main purpose was to provide credit and, along with credit, other facilities to small and marginal farmers, right? And they also covered, not only they covered the farmers, but they also covered the artisans and the small entrepreneurs, right? So that means regional rural banks, first thing, areas they covered were where commercial banks could not be set up. Secondly, they provided loans, right? Their main purpose was to give loan or credit, and along with credit, other facilities also, right? To small and marginal farmers as well as the artisans and small entrepreneurs. Okay. Then third we have with us is the cooperatives and land development banks. So cooperative, the main objective was, setting up of cooperative was to free the farmers from the clutches of money lenders, right? Because as I said, that 30% of the total credit was given by money lenders, right? And rest 1%, 2% by relatives, then later on by others. But the major share of credit was given by the money lenders. And once they took loan from the money lenders, the farmers were caught in a debt trap. Okay, so just to make them free from that debt trap, the cooperative and land development banks were set up, right? The purpose was the same, to provide loans to the farmers at cheap rate of interest. Now comes the important, okay, the land development bank, sorry, cooperatives I have covered, right? That is to give, make them free from the let's say clutches of the money lenders and provide credit at cheap rates. Now what is land development bank, right? In the land development bank, farmers were given loans against the mortgage of land. See, you pick up the word land, that is the key word here, which will give you an hint. So, farmers used to mortgage, they used to keep their land as security, right, with these banks, and against this collateral or security they were given the loan, right, by these banks, right? So that was the main purpose. Next, I have with me is the NABARD. I'll be covering NABARD in detail. So we are just taking it up as a separate concept. And then we have the self-help groups. Okay, just I'm taking it up again. Non-institutional sources includes money lenders, relatives, traders, and commission agents, and the rich landlords. Here, the purpose I made it very clear that farmers were exploited by charging higher rate of interest, but after being exploited by these sources, still farmers prefer to take loans from these sources because it was very easy, less of formalities to be fulfilled, right? No paperworks to be done, and moreover they were very easy to contact. They are within the village itself and they know each other, so they have a rapport with each other, so it was very easy to take loans from all these sources. As against the non-institutional sources, I have institutional sources. So under institutional sources, we have the commercial banks, regional rural banks, cooperative and land development banks, NABARD, and self-help groups. The main purpose was these sources came into existence after the nationalization of banks, that is 1969. right? So the main purpose was to give credit to the farmers at cheaper rate of interest, and along with credit, somewhere some other facilities were also being provided. Like under the Land Development Bank, you were to mortgage your land, and then you can take loan. Then along with that loan, you can even buy or purchase the agriculture implements. You can even pay back your old debts also with the loan you have taken, right? So these were the other facilities that were given. So now we have with us the government, which is a very important source, right? Government used to give loans and lend during the emergencies, basically, right? Emergencies like famines, floods, etc. During this time, so government takes out various schemes, right, from prime minister scheme or some other. Nowadays also prime minister is working into all these, right? So that was the government. Now this was, I was talking about the sources of credit for rural households in India. See, you can see that maximum amount of loans are given by the money lenders, 30%. Then is the cooperative societies, right? That is your self-help groups and all those, right? 27%. Then commercial banks, 25%. Then you have with you relatives and friends, 7%. Others can be any other source if they have, right? 7% again, traders and landlords. Rich landlords is the last in the list, right? Okay. So now we just move on to NABARD. Okay, I won't be able to take up NABARD here, children, because we are almost about to get over with the class. The queries, I think somebody had some query. I would like to just proceed to them. Anybody wants to ask anything? Yes, children? Aman, you raised hand in the beginning, I suppose, beta? No? Okay, fine then. Okay, so now I'm just taking a recap of what I have covered today, since I won't be able to start afresh with the topic. Credit is needed basically, as I said, for three purposes we covered. First was meeting the family requirement, initial investments on for agriculture, meeting the family requirements of marriages and deaths and all those religious ceremonies, and for covering the long gestation period. The main sources of credit which we have done can be divided into non-institutional and institutional sources, right? So in this non-institutional sources, money lenders, relatives, traders, commissions, agents, and rich landlords, and the list is here, right? And this was what I covered in the last slide. Okay, so fine, children, here we end the class. Wish you all the best and enjoy. Be safe. Take care of everyone at home. Thank you all.